Hey guys, it's Faye from Solar Flow and I am back with an all new video. Today's topic is peeling back the three-dimensional veil on energy. We are going to be exploring first and foremost what it is, why do we care about it, how is it impacting us, and how does an energy reader such as myself connect to and read somebody's energy, as well as the ethics of reading energy, and is it easier to read the energy of somebody on this side or when they have crossed over? So if this sounds like an interesting topic to you, please stick around, and if not, I will catch you at another video. Now, first and foremost, before we get into it, I'm going to take a moment to introduce myself in case you are new here, or maybe a friend has shared this video with you and you want to come to understand who am I and why am I even talking about energy. So as I had said, my name is Faye, and I am an intuitive, a medium, an empath, an energy reader, an astral traveler, and remote viewer. But I don't like labels. So we're gonna take all of that and we're gonna put it aside and we're just gonna say, I am hella fucking sensitive to energy. I have always been hella fucking sensitive to energy and have come through the years of my life to understand that being sensitive to energy is a gift and ability. And we all have gifts and abilities. Maybe this is one of yours and you want to come to understand it a little bit better. Maybe this is not one of yours, but you just want to kind of understand the way in which all this energy business works. Either way, this video is for you. Now, I'm also going to say, if you would like me to peel back that three-dimensional veil on any of the other things that I had just mentioned, and you want to come to understand the way in which maybe astral traveling or remote viewing works, comment down below and let me know which, if anything, would you like to learn more about next. And with that in mind, let's dive in. So, first and foremost, what is energy? I know that sounds like such a stupid question. Here's the thing, a lot of us don't actually understand what energy is. So I'm not gonna give you like the boring scientific explanation of what you're gonna find in a science book. Because here's what we do on this station, if you're new here. Or if you've been here for a while and you want a reminder. We are peeling back the three-dimensional veil and exploring what are the soul, spiritual, energetic, and vibrational components that are comprising the three-dimensional world that we see around us. So this is not the channel that you're gonna come to if you want to learn something that you would find on Google. Hell no. But if you want to come to understand what is going on behind the three-dimensional veil that is making up the world that you see around you, maybe your own particular world or maybe like the world at large, this is where you're going to want to be. So energy is as follows. I'm going to compare it to the wind. Energy can be moved. Energy can be influenced, just the same way that the wind can move particles around and that the way the wind can influence the world as well. Because look at a hurricane or a tornado. What is that? That is wind moving at a very, very high speed and in a particular manner that can then create modifications in the 3D world around. There's a hurricane, it can knock, the shutters off of windows. It can knock the branches off of a tree. If it's a tornado, things can actually get picked up in the tornado and it can be moved from one location to another. This is the physical manifestation of the energy movement. But there is also the energetic component in the way that energy actually works. And how does an energy reader such as myself connect to and read to this nebulous concept of energy? It is through a concept called quantum entanglement. And in explaining what quantum entanglement is, you will also come to understand how energy, which is a non-physical expression, can actually be altered and influenced as well, just like the high winds on the physical expression of energy. So, what first and foremost is quantum entanglement? I'm not going to give you the Google explanation of it because here again on this channel, we are trying to peel back the three-dimensional veil. You want to take your time to Google it? Google will give you a fine way of coming to understand this phenomenon. But if you want to understand how it actually pertains to your life and the world around you, this is how it works. Quantum entanglement is when there are two particles. In this case, I'm going to be using my crystal and my pen. There are two particles that can be influenced and impacted by an opposite particle, irrespective of time, space, and distance. So, for example, right now my crystal and my pen are very, very close together. It would probably not be a surprise to say that I could take my pen and I could tap it on my crystal. Let's say they're on opposite sides of the room. Could they be impacting one another? Let's say they were in different rooms of a house. Let's say they were in different states. Let's say they were in different countries. Let's say one particle is on one point of the universe, and the opposite particle is on the furthest most opposite point in the universe. Can they impact and influence one another? And yes, according to this phenomenon that has been proven, that is known as quantum entanglement, these two particles, not in their physical form, let's say, but these two particles can absolutely impact and influence the opposite particle, irrespective of time, space, and distance. So it's, for example, where you have a butterfly that is flapping its wings in New Orleans. Will that butterfly flapping its wings be experienced in Jacksonville, Florida? Yes. Will the impact of that butterfly flapping its wings be experienced in New York City? Yes. Will it be experienced in Moscow, Russia? Yes. Will it be experienced on another planet? Yes. Because this is the proven phenomenon known as quantum entanglement, where two particles can impact and influence each other irrespective of time, space, or distance. And how does that work? Through vibration and energy. What is a vibration? It is, for example, where you are standing at a body of water. You have a pebble in your hand. You throw the pebble into the water, and what then is created? There are ripples or rings coming out from throwing the pebble in the water. That is a vibrational manifestation in the three-dimensional world that was created by one particle influencing and impacting another. And energy works exactly the same way. It's just not a physical object, it's a vibrational object, and the vibration of that object is creating the energetic reverberations or the rings coming out from the water. And just like the rings in the water might then displace a leaf that is floating on the water or a tadpole that is water, it works the exact same way with energy. And that is the way in which myself as an energetic reader is able to connect to a person's energy. It is through quantum entanglement. Now, there's different kinds of energy readers, and this is actually very, very interesting, and it actually pertains to it. Because in the explanation of one different type, you will come to understand how an energy reader can read somebody's energy, which is, I'm going to say as follows. Some energy readers work really, really well when they are holding an item of a person. So let's say, for example, you want to connect to the energy of your father who has crossed over, and your father had his most favorite pen. It was the pen that he wrote his checks with. It was the pen that he wrote his to-do list with. It was the pen that he wrote his grocery list with. It was the pen that he wrote in his journal with. So his three-dimensional fingerprints would be all over that pen. An energy reader does very much the same thing, but not where we are looking at the three-dimensional fingerprints. We are looking at the energetic fingerprints that are all over that item. So someone that's particularly sensitive to a physical manifestation of a particular person that has their energetic fingerprints all over it, the way in which I myself will actually connect to and read somebody's energy is through their name. Because what is our name? It is a three-dimensional representation of that person's identity. So similar, if you will, to let's say a driver's license or a passport, what is the information that is on it? Sure, it has their name, but what else? It has their height, their weight, their eye color, their hair color. So that way when a person is traveling, the TSA agent is looking at their passport or their driver's license and they're saying, yes, this is the person. I can tell because the identification matches up with the person that is representing them in front of me. So the name of a person is actually a three-dimensional representation of that person, which is weird. I know you're thinking, well, it's energy. Why do I need to have a three-dimensional represent or identification of that person? And it is because we are still on a three-dimensional plane. The earth plane is a heavy, dense, three-dimensional energy, and therefore to connect to somebody's energy, which can be something more nebulous and akin to the energy that we might experience in other places in the known universe, here in the three-dimensional plane, there has to be some sort of a representation of that person, such as their most prized and favored pen, or the representation of their identification in the 3D, which is their name. So the example is, which had just come up in our most recent Ask Me Anything, which is you guys had wanted me to look into the energy of that woman who was on the airplane, very dysregulated about a person in the back that wasn't real, right? So I needed to have her three-dimensional name to connect to her energy. This is the best way in which I can connect to energy, because it's a representation of that particle or of that soul's identification, but it's the 3D version of it. And since we're on a 3D plane, I need to have a 3D representation of it. So how do energy readers connect to people's energy? It is through this phenomenon, proven phenomenon, known as quantum entanglement. And what is quantum entanglement? It is where particles in any point across the known universe can be impacted and influenced by another particle, irrespective of time, space, and distance. Now, that is also how and why I am able to connect to and read the energy of a person that has crossed over and is no longer on the earth plane. Because look at it this way. If someone is on the earth plane, imagine it's as if I'm in my kitchen and they're in my living room, and I'm just calling out to them because it's a smaller distance. But now imagine, if you will, if that person was on a different floor of the house. So let's say my mom is upstairs and I'm asking her to bring my sweater down to me. So I would be hollering, "Mom, can you bring my sweater down to me?" Because she's a further distance away. But let's say my mom's in the kitchen and I want her to bring me a cup of water. I just might say, "Mom, can you bring me a cup of water?" But let's say, for example, my mom is now not in the next room, or she's not on a different floor, she's in the garden. So if I want to get her attention and I want to communicate with her, I'm going to have to call louder, "Mom!" She's just a little bit further away. It's exactly the same thing when it comes to connecting and reading the energy of a person that has crossed over. They're just further away. But as we've already explored in the principles of quantum entanglement, particles can impact and interact with each other irrespective of time, space, or distance. So the particle or the soul's essence of a person that has crossed over, they're just a further distance away. So is it harder to connect to them? Not necessarily. I'll tell you in some ways how it's actually easier, which is as such. So the person is a little bit further away. They're not on the earth plane any longer. They're on a different plane altogether. So I might need to take, instead of 10 seconds to see if I can connect to their energy, I might need to take 30 seconds, for example. But once I can connect to their energy, they are unencumbered by the earth plane. And what do we know about the earth plane? It is the heaviest and densest vibration. It is the heaviest and densest energy. And as I have likened it to walking in quicksand, there are also a number of veils that are preventing a soul from coming to see themselves clearly. What are those veils? So it can be where we're veiled from one another and we are not understanding that though we have bodies and our bodies may look different, we're actually all connected because we're all souls. It can be a veil where we are disconnected from our understanding and belief in the divine and in God, and where we think that we're separate from God, without understanding that in actuality, we have a spark of God's source energy all residing in us. That's what our soul is. Now, it can also be where we are, if you will, seduced by everything that the earth plane has to offer, where we then come to believe or understand that our purpose here on being on the earth plane is of things that are just of a three-dimensional pursuit, such as I need to have a nice car, I need to have a nice house because it's all about the status. I will feel successful when I have X amount of dollars in my bank. I want to go on luxury vacations every single year, because we are overly identifying with our place in the three-dimensional realm. So look at it this way. Imagine, if you will, you are hiking. And you're hiking in a very wooded area. There's like a lot of these pine trees all around you, and it's kind of like rocky, and you're climbing up a boulder and then you're climbing down a boulder. So you have all of these three-dimensional things that are around you that can be obstructing your view, right? You've got the pine trees, you've got the boulders. So you might have to climb to the top of a boulder to have like a higher vantage point. And then when you're down on the bottom, you have all of these pine trees around you that you can't even necessarily see where the next boulder is until you're right up at it. But now imagine, if you will, you are a passenger in a helicopter and you're flying over the exact same terrain that that hiker is hiking in. You now have an elevated vantage point. You do not have your view being obstructed by the pine trees and by the boulders. You can see, maybe instead of 5, 10, 50 feet all around you, because you have that elevated vantage point, you can now see 50 miles all around you. So anytime I am connecting to the energy of a person on the other side, it is where they have that elevated vantage point. So they're not necessarily only reporting to me on what is going on in their three-dimensional life in whatever particular incarnation I'm connecting to them in. But it is where they can share with me any number of things that have happened to them in their previous incarnations, how those all connect to that current incarnation, where they can also share things that are anything to do with the soul, energetic, spiritual, or vibrational component, and what those influences were that had impacted the person that they were in that most recent incarnation that I was connecting to. So if you're familiar with my videos, you know that that is something that tends to come up when we're kind of talking to and connecting to the energy of a person that has crossed over. And if you want to learn more about that, then you can go back and watch any of the channeled videos that I have done on people that are both with us and no longer with us, because the information varies quite wildly. And two such examples I'm just going to give you is, let's say where I had done the energy read on Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee. They were sharing with me their energy as who they are in this incarnation. Pamela Anderson, Tommy Lee. But if we had gone back, let's say to the video that I had done on Tupac Shakur, what had come up was who he was very, very notably in a previous incarnation. Because that soul, when they are no longer on this side and they are no longer veiled and they have that elevated vantage point, as if they are in the helicopter, they can now share with me things that have happened in previous incarnations as well. Plus, any number of other interesting things can come up, such as not just who they were in previous incarnations, but why their soul had a particular soul contract in an incarnation, why they came to do the things that they had done. You can go back and see the video I had done on Ted Bundy if you want to learn more about that as well. So I wouldn't say that it's necessarily easy or harder to connect to the energy of somebody that has crossed over. They're just in a different room. But because they might be in a different room, they have a different vantage point than I do and can then share things that I can't see. If I'm in my kitchen and my mom's in the backyard, she can share with me the vantage point that she has in the backyard that I may not necessarily be able to see because I'm in the kitchen. So it's similar, but also a little bit different when connecting to the energy of those on this side versus on the other side. Now, it's not to say, first and foremost, that if I'm working with somebody that I can't see who they were in various different incarnations. I can, and that is through connecting to something called the Akashic Records. And the Akashic Records are, if you will, imagine it's kind of like, I have a notebook on my lap, so I'm going to use it as a three-dimensional example. So let's say this notebook it's kind of like a journal, and it has everything that I've ever done in this incarnation known as Fae. As if I was keeping like records on my day. 9 a.m. I went here, 10 a.m. I went there, 12 p.m. I went here. But now imagine, if you will, the notebook isn't just for this particular incarnation. It's not just the pages that are filled up from this incarnation, it's the pages that are filled up from previous incarnations. That's what the Akashic Records are. So we can actually gain that elevated vantage point when working with somebody to access the Akashic Records and to see how their previous incarnations have maybe influencing what is going on in this particular incarnation. For example, if somebody has phobias or fears and there's no origin point in this lifetime, that's when we would actually access the Akashic Records. We would go back to a previous incarnation in their past and we would say, aha, here, we have found it. We know what it connects to. So as I've shared in one of my previous videos, I don't particularly like heights. And when I was in one of my yoga teacher trainings, we were working on forearm stand. It's kind of like where you're balancing on your forearms and your legs are up in the air. Now I just didn't like it. I just did not like it. I just did not like it. And it didn't matter who was working with me on it. It didn't matter if I was working by the wall, because yes, you can do it by the wall too. I just didn't like it. And one day my teacher was coming around and he had been observing me having a problem with this forearm balance from the very, very first day. And he looked at me and said something to the effect of, you have a fear of something happening because you broke your neck in a previous incarnation. And that was an invitation for me then, when I was starting to do past life regressions, in coming to understand why this had happened and why I have this phobia. And guess what? It's not like the most exotic way that one could cross over and get a phobia. It's not like being, for example, like Anne Boleyn, right? She was beheaded. Like, imagine the soul that Anne Boleyn now is and the kind of phobias that she may have, because she literally lost her head. So mine is not quite so glamorous or exotic, but basically I had the opportunity to go back and to see in a previous incarnation, I had, it's so lame, I'm sorry, I had fallen off a cliff and I had broken my neck. But this is to share with you the example of how you can have a phobia that carries through from page to page in a notebook, or from lifetime to lifetime in a notebook. And being an energy reader gives us the ability to explore those things. And one of the reasons that I love being an energy reader is, first and foremost, not because it's like I'm like energetically snooping on people. We'll talk about that in a moment, because first and foremost, I have to get consent before I read somebody's energy. But one of the reasons I really, really love doing this kind of work is because when we can come to understand where a phobia or a particular belief system that might be antiquated is holding somebody back, once we can identify it and we can clear it, that person can completely change their life. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I love doing forearm balance because I don't, but can I do it? Yes. Do I enjoy doing it? No. But did it get me over the fear that I had? Abso-fucking-lutely. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about the ethics of reading somebody's energy, which is to say that first and foremost, it is completely unethical for a light worker or somebody that is working with high vibrations to connect to and to read somebody's energy without their consent. So, what does that actually look like? Well, anytime I'm reading somebody's energy and they're a client of mine, I am requesting at the beginning of the session to connect to and to read their energy. It's the same kind of thing that I would do even if I was reading the energy of someone that has crossed over, or even if I am reading the energy of a celebrity. It's a little bit different, and I'll explain to you why. But first and foremost, any private citizen, any person that's just walking around that you know or it's you yourself, have the expectation of privacy. So would an energy reader such as myself go around and, like, for example, when I'm in the grocery store and my groceries are being rung up and being bagged, am I going to read that person's energy? No. First and foremost, it's unethical. Second of all, that person has that expectation of privacy. They have not asked me to read their energy. And when we're working with high vibration energy, we don't partake in unethical practices such as that. Now, anytime I'm connecting with somebody's energy, whether they're on this side or they are on the other side, I still have to connect to the energy and see if their energy wants to share anything with me. Sometimes they don't want to. And this is what I have also shared in AMA and AMA, which is like, let's say I'm going to hand out flyers. I have this whole block of houses that I have to hand out flyers to. I'm going to go to the door, I'm going to knock on the door, I'm going to want to hand them a flyer. If the person is not opening their door and they're not coming to take the flyer from me, I'm not going to stand around and keep knocking on the door and being like, I have a flyer, please let me in, come take it from me. Maybe I'll just leave it on the doorstep, maybe I'll take it with me and I'll just go to the next house. It's kind of the same way when connecting to and reading the energy of anybody that's not first and foremost a client. Because when I'm working with a client, we're talking on the telephone. So I can say to them in real time, do I have your consent to connect to and to read your energy? But when it is someone on the other side, or when it's a celebrity, or when it's anybody, I have to first connect to and ask for consent to read their energy. And if I don't get it, I move on. Now, sometimes I will actually go back more than once to somebody to try to connect to and to read their energy. Maybe they'll open the door for me. Maybe they will never open the door. Maybe they just weren't particularly in the mood the first time I came around, but the second time I came around, they were more amenable to it. And that has actually happened. Which is why, as an energy reader, when I'm looking into a public figure, I would never go one time and then just not go back ever again and be like, well, I guess they just don't want their energy read, bye-bye. Because I have actually gone back to connect to energy to see if they had changed their mind, and sometimes they do. And sometimes I have, great energetic conversations with them, and it's something that would never have come about if I was just like, well, I'll move the fuck on right now. So it is essential because, as I have shared time and again, free will reigns supreme, and that connects to the consent of a person having their energy read, whether they are on the earth plane or whether they are on a different plane of existence altogether. Now, it is also, I'm just going to say, a little bit different when we are dealing with the energy of a lot of celebrities. Because there was a trend a few years ago where celebrities were like opening their homes up to like People Magazine or Us Weekly or like Architecture Digest or, all of those home decor kind of magazines. They were opening their home up and they were allowing their home to be, first and foremost, physically porous, where they were having photographers come in and take a picture of their home. But it's also where they're being very energetically porous, because it's like, first and foremost, like what is the most intimate place a person can be? It's in their home. So when they are opening their home up on such an intimate level to the world at large, or anybody that is going to pick up that magazine now or at any point in the future, they're being quite incredibly energetically porous, and they are opening their energy up quite easily. So sometimes it's actually easier to pick up and read the energy of a celebrity because they're used to being very energetically porous. They're used to maybe opening up their homes, or they're doing press tours when they're promoting a new movie, or they're on the red carpet and they're talking about their life. So they can be quite energetically porous anyway. Now, it's not to say that I would still try to usurp their free will and just like go around them and start reading their energy. It's still unethical. It's just to say that they are quite energetically porous and they are quite energetically open, and therefore it's actually quite easy to read the energy of a celebrity. Now, it's also because they have a lot more, almost like, it's gonna kind of sound a little bit strange, but they have more like 3D evidence of their life sprinkled throughout all of the world. So again, they've opened up their home, they've talked about their relationships. So it's more, again, this example of them being energetically porous, but it's also where they're like kind of like leaving so much more of themselves behind than a regular person would, right? So celebrities are kind of like used to talking about themselves. They're so much more energetically open. You know, the person who's ringing me up in the grocery store, maybe they're going to make small talk, but they're not really energetically porous and they're not used to opening themselves up. So a way in which an energy reader would actually get the very, very best energy read on a person is first and foremost when they give their consent and when they are excited to have their energy read. Because again, I'm going to use the example of a notebook. Let's say this is somebody's diary. And my notebook has a rubber binder on it, okay? But let's say the rubber binder has been replaced by a lock and a key. So if somebody wanted to first and foremost be unethical, could they try to maybe open it a little bit? Sure. It's locked, so what are they doing? They're maybe just gonna pull the pages apart a little bit. Maybe they can see a few words here and there. But let's say the person says to you, you know what, I'm not so good verbally communicating, but I've been jotting down some thoughts that I want to share with you. And they open up the notebook and they hand it to you. This is where they are inviting you into a private space. And that is when you will get the very, very best energy read on them. It's just like reading the pages on a book. But in this case, it would be where that person has invited you in, they're excited to have you there, and they are trusting and open of you. So just a little differentiation of the different ways in which to read and connect to energy and the ethics behind it. Now, so we spoke about the ethics. We also spoke about if it's easier to read the energy of somebody on the other side. Let's talk a little bit about how quantum entanglement can actually play out in the three-dimensional world. Which is to say that people can become entangled in any number of ways. They can become entangled very literally physically. So let's say, for example, I have gone to have coffee with a friend, and when I get there, we give each other a hug. That is where we have now exchanged energy of a physical nature. People that are in a romantic relationship, they are going to actually be exchanging more or less perhaps intimate energy through their intimate interactions. Now, people can also become entangled emotionally as well as psychologically. But they can also become entangled vibrationally. We're going to talk about all of these different things. So first and foremost, we already spoke about physical, right? I've hugged my friend. My energy has now mixed and mingled with her energy, hers with mine. That's on the energetic and vibrational level. So imagine, if you will, you have gone into a public restroom, and when you leave, you do not know that you have toilet paper stuck to the bottom of your shoe. Now, because you don't know that it's there, you don't stop to take it off. So you're going about your day. You're going back into the restaurant. You are then perhaps going to your dry cleaners. You're picking up your dry cleaning. Then you left something at work, so you go back to work to pick it up. Then you go to pick up your dog, and then you take your dog for a walk. And unbeknownst to you, this whole time you have toilet paper stuck to the bottom of your shoe. So when you get home at the end of the day and you take your shoes off and you look at your shoe and you see the toilet paper, imagine what that piece of toilet paper is going to look like. It is no longer going to be all white. It's probably going to be torn. It's probably going to be black in some places. It's probably going to have specks of God knows what stuck to it. This is exactly the way that energetic tags work. We don't see them, but they are very much connected to us. We are collecting throughout the entire course of our day. The more, and especially the more we go out and the more we're around different locations and different people, we are collecting all of their energy tags. And if we don't know about it, and if we don't clear it, guess what can happen? We can become very mentally and emotionally dysregulated because we are carrying all of that energy with us. So imagine, if you will, it's not just a square of toilet paper, but imagine you've gone to the manufacturing plant of Charmin, who makes and distributes toilet paper, and you didn't realize that you have every roll in the Charmin warehouse attached to the bottom of your shoe. Imagine how dirty all of those trails are going to be when you get home. So that is, I have a number of videos. I will link it down below if you actually do want to go back and you do want to explore ways in which you can clear your energy so you will not become dysregulated. But that is a way that it happens on an energetic level. Now, let's talk about some other ones. So we spoke about physical, we spoke about energetic. There is also psychological. And what is that? That is first and foremost, let's say, for example, you grew up in a household where there was this idea that anybody that is wealthy, they only came to acquire their wealth because they were unethical. So in the three-dimensional, what's going to happen is we're just going to explain it away by saying this person has the particular belief that they have because this is what was taught to them. But what is that actually on a behind the veil level? It is where there has been a psychological entanglement from the parent passed down to the child. Now, there is also emotional ones. Let's say and I know the empaths out there, you will know when you are in the presence of somebody, let's say your friend just went through a breakup, she's devastated, you go to her house to visit her, and then when you leave, you will be feeling the remnants of her grief still attached to you. That is where there is an emotional entanglement. And again, if we don't understand these things, and if we don't talk about it and we don't explain it, people are walking around with all of these different accumulations all over them, which is going to influence the way in which they are living their life, and where they're also not living their life authentically as themselves because it's all of this other energy that's connected to and stuck to them. So that is also one of the reasons that I love to do the work that I do, because through the understanding of these things and working with a person, I'm not just, let's say, for example, identifying the trauma that has happened to them in this lifetime, but it's where we can also start to explore and peel back those three-dimensional veils in understanding what is perhaps an antiquated belief system that they have. Maybe it doesn't even belong to them. It belongs to their parents, and it was a psychological entanglement. What is something that they have picked up as a maladaptive coping mechanism because of some emotional entanglement that they have experienced in their house? So once we can identify that, we can then clear it from them, which then disconnects them from those energies that are not even necessarily theirs to begin with. And then by doing that, we're allowing fresh energy to come into them, which is their energy first and foremost. So people actually, when they can come to understand these things, can start to disconnect from things that no longer belong to them, beliefs, emotions, thoughts, physical energies, vibrational energies, Like, for example, you're in a room, someone comes in and they change the energy in its entirety. Maybe they have really, really heavy dark energy. You're going to be impacted by that. So all of these things can start to like accumulate on somebody and then dysregulates them. So through the understanding of it, can we then disconnect from it and bring in more of that person's own authentic and genuine energy that they can then move forward with, where they're not encumbered and then they become unencumbered by things that no longer belong to them. And what are those things that no longer belong to them? It is the emotional, psychological, physical, and energetic and vibrational entanglements. Now, this is also kind of interesting, which is I'm going to share with you, because there is, I think, a lot of, sometimes people say, like, think that I'm a psychic. And so here's the differentiation between what an energy reader is and does and what a psychic is and does. Now, I've never actually gone to a psychic, so I can't say definitively. Like, if you have, please comment down below and let me know. But my understanding of kind of what a psychic is, where a psychic can kind of see your potential future, right? Let's say you're in a relationship with somebody and you want to know, am I going to end up being with this person? Are we going to get married? Are we going to have kids? Or are we going to break up? So when you go to a psychic, they would be able to look into the potential timelines. Here's where it's a little bit nuanced and a little bit different with what an energy reader is. Because as an energy reader, there are so many different variables that can come into play with a person's potential timeline, which is first and foremost free will. We all have free will. So let's say there's a person, they're 20 years old, they're in university, and they think by the time they are 30, they're going to go to dental school, they're going to become a dentist, and they're going to have their own dental practice. But let's say once they're in university, they really, really start to love learning about art and history. So then they decide, you know what, I don't want to take these classes that are, I don't know what the prerequisites would be for dental school, but I actually discovered that I really, really love art and history, and I'm going to now study that. And now that person has also decided once they get their degree, they want to actually get a master's degree in art history. Now, X amount of years later, they get out of school with a master's degree in art history. And then let's say for whatever reason, they end up meeting somebody and then they get, this actually happened to a friend of mine. That's why I'm using it as an example. She got a degree in art history and she worked for like 10 years in finance. Never used her degree in art. Do you want to know how many people I actually know, friends and clients alike, have degrees in things that they have never actually ended up using? I have a degree in something I don't even use either. So it's because along our way, there are so many different variables that are going to come up that can impact and influence our potential future. But here's the thing that a psychic is not going to take into account, which is the vibration that the person is on. And I'm going to compare a vibration, just like at the beginning, how I had compared energy to wind, I'm going to compare vibration to a highway. Let's say a person is, now I don't know where you live. I live in a big metropolitan city. I live in Los Angeles. We have a lot of freeways here. So I'm going to reference the freeways that I know, but I'm also going to explain it to you, which is as such. Let's say a person wants to go east and west. We have a freeway for that. It's called the 10 because our freeways, they don't have names, they have numbers. So the number 10 freeway goes east and west. So if somebody wants to get from the beach to downtown Los Angeles, they would take the 10 freeway. That's the direction that it goes. But now we're going to say that the direction a person wants to go is not a direction like east and west. It is where they are and where they want to go. And are those 2 points in energetic alignment? Because let's say where they want to go while they're on the 10 that only runs east and west, but let's say they want to go to North Hollywood. And as north implies, in North Hollywood, it's north. So they would then need to pick up a freeway that runs north to south. And for that, we have a freeway called the 405. The 405 runs north and south. So if a person was going east and west and they wanted to then go north, they would have to switch to a different freeway and they would have to pick up the 405 freeway to go north. It's the same thing when it comes to the vibration. And as an energy reader, what we can actually do is look at the energy, the vibration, if you will, that somebody is on, which is akin to the freeway. And then we can see if based on the current freeway they are on, are they going to be able to get to where they're going? Because if a person, for example, is a very, very low dense vibration and they are constantly complaining about everything that is wrong in their life, what freeway are they on? They are on the freeway that is complaint, unhappiness, and low vibration. So therefore, if let's say that's the 10 freeway, they will only be able to access things that are on that freeway. They will then, therefore, if they want to get to North Hollywood, or if they want to get to positive things in their life, would need to change different freeways. So what an energy reader can actually do is to look at the energy that a person is in and around. What are they drawn to and what are they drawing into them? Because like attracts like, right? If you are on an east and west going freeway, you can only go east and west. So what is the vibration and frequency that they are in? Because that will tell you what they can access. So that is an additional layer to what an energy reader does that a psychic cannot necessarily do, which is where we're not just looking at the free will of the person, but we are also looking at their vibration, their energetic blueprint, and can they access where they want to go based on the freeway or the frequency that they are on. Now, why do I always end my videos by saying stay in the high vibration? And that is because by raising our vibration, it is then allowing us to have access to different freeways. So we're not now just running on the east to west freeway, because that's the vibration and frequency that we're a match for. We're also not only running on the north to south freeway, because that's the energy and vibration that we are a match for. But it is where you are literally creating different freeways at any given time, depending on where it is that you want to go, because you are now no longer locked into the vibration that you were in prior, but where you have elevated your vibration to where you can create. So now if you need to go northeast or southwest, you don't need to change, you don't need to drive who knows out of your way to pick up a different freeway that will get you in that direction. You don't need to now exit off of the freeway to take the streets to where you are wanting to go. It's literally where you can create in real time the freeway that you need to get to where you're going. If it's not north, south, or east, west, it can go any direction that you need to go, because you have now gotten yourself onto the highest frequency and the highest vibration. And when we are most in those kinds of energies, the levels of barriers that are around us fall away, because we are not limited to the vibration that we were in, or the frequency, or the freeway. I don't have to go only east or west. I don't have to go only north and south. I can go any direction that I want to, because I am on the highest vibration. And when we are on the highest vibration, we then can create in real time and have transcended the three-dimensional limitations that we have. So imagine, if you will, you're on the freeway and you realize, I'm on the wrong freeway. I don't want to drive 10 miles out of my way to pick up a different freeway. You're the cosmic creator in real time. And therefore, you can say, I need to go northeast. and you can, just like you're in the game of Minecraft, you can create the freeway in real time. So it's a little bit nuanced in the way that an energy reader can actually assist a person, and it is through the fact that we can actually see the energetic blueprint of their frequency or of the freeway that they are actually on. And then also, almost as if we are helping them navigate, we're kind of like their GPS now. Where the person needs to pick up the 405, they're going east-west, they need to go north-south. So now imagine, if you will, the energy reader is kind of like their GPS and saying, in 5.5 miles, stay to your right to merge onto the 405 freeway, which will then take them north. Very, very interesting, but a different differentiation there. So I hope you guys understand why I always say stay in the high vibration, and so that you can have the ability and the option to co-create in real time. And because we are nearing the end of the video, first and foremost, I'm going to say that I hope that you have found this video to be interesting and informative, maybe even thought-provoking. Take what resonates, leave the rest behind, and as always, stay in the high vibration and create in real time.